Okay, y'all. Now, quick story time here. Um, when we were growing up, like I said, many times I come from a Christian household, and my father was strict as hell, and my mother just went along with what my father said because he ran the household, and that was it. And every 5 minutes, if we didn't like something, he had the words for us. If you don't like what goes on in my house, you can get out. But anyway, I remember once my sister got married, she ended up moving to Garland, Texas with her husband. And they ended up having 5 children. They were happy. All of a sudden, they ran into a rough patch. So my sister moved back home for 2 weeks. My parents made it very clear to her that she could not live with us permanently. She had to get her own, go move into her own house or figure out what's going on with her and her husband. By then, her husband had moved back to Orlando, and he was running around with some other woman. Now, my sister, over the 2 weeks, she started stewing. She started stewing about, I guess, what she was gonna. I don't know what she was doing. What she was stewing, and black people, y'all know what that means. She was stewing. So, in the long run, she made a decision to take my father's gun. And my father was really strict about weapons in the house. He had lots of weapons in the house to protect the house. But he made it very clear to all of us that you never touch any of the guns in the house, period. And because the guns were to protect the house and the property. So when my sister, she was there stewing and stewing and stewing, my mother was sitting in the living room crocheting. And I remember this because I was just a little boy. I used to always sit next to my mother. And I remember my father would sleep on the couch. And I guess my mother noticed my sister sneaking into their room. And you can see down the hall, the, the washrooms on the other side. Then we had a spare room, a guest room, and then my parents' room were on the other side. Our rooms were upstairs. Now, um, my mother saw my sister go into her room, and she's wondering what she was doing in the room. So my mother got it at an angle and looked, and she saw my sister taking the gun from under my father's pillow. So under my father's side of the bed with the pillow. So she took the gun. My mother went in there and told my father. She said, "I think that girl," because she ran out the door. She woke my father up. My mother woke my father up and said, "That girl done ran out the door with your gun." And my father, the only thing he had on was his Fruit of Balloon boxer underwear. Y'all know them kind of Fruit of Balloon one. His V-neck Fruit of Balloon t-shirt. And put his shoes on, put his those furry kind of slipper shoe thing, hush puppies on. He put them hush puppies on, and was just running around the house. And my mother was trying to talk to him because he was in such a, he just woke up. He was in a frenzy. He was out of his mind. And he wasn't saying nothing. He was just moving around really quick, trying to find his keys and everything. Grabbed me by the hand, and we all ran and jumped in his truck. And my father didn't jump into the good truck. He jumped into the bad truck, the truck with the hole in the floor, and you could see the road when you're driving down. Anyway, I remember this, and I'm sitting there looking at the hole, and my father's flying, and my mother's trying to talk to him in the truck. He ain't hearing nothing. He pulled up to these people's yard, ran right in the yard, right on the grass, drove the truck right on the grass, didn't even just drove it up there, jumped out, ran in these folks' house, didn't even know if he was at the right house, had me by the hand, and I'm looking, and my mother's like, "Don't go in there, don't do this, don't go in there, don't go in there." He went in there, he saw my sister standing there, brandishing the gun at her husband and his girlfriend, and my father's like, "Give me my gun. Give me my gun." And he said, if I say it again, before she could even say anything else, all hell broke loose. I ain't gonna say what my father did, but he knocked her down. Yes, he did. He knocked her down, picked up his gun. Her husband jumped up and said, "Don't you hit her." And he said, if anybody in his whole family was there. My father stood up. He says, "Anybody in here says one word, I'm going to kill everybody in here. If anybody in here says one word." And my mother was there trying to pull him out the door, and I'm screaming and crying. And he says, and he just stood there. And my sister was just there. She was a mess. And he was just staring at her. He was just staring at her. He stood there for like 5 minutes, and the whole house was quiet. Nobody was saying nothing. And when he left, he kicked the whole screen door down. I mean, the entire screen door. He kicked the entire screen door down and stood out there, us in the truck, rearing the motor on his truck. I don't know what that was about, but he was rearing the motor on his truck, and he was something steamed. And my mother calmed him down a bit, and we drove off. The next day, my sister had to move. She had to move the next day. My father could have cared less. He put her out and all her stuff out. Yes, he did. I remember that. My mother's like, well, that girl ain't got... He put everything of hers out on the front porch and closed the front door and locked it. Yes, he did. Story time. Don't mess with black fathers, and mainly the ones from church. Woo! That's why I never did nothing wrong. I stayed in my room with the door closed because I was scared.